Welcome to episode 66 of the 301 show. We got a great show on tap for you here today. The Lynx have continued their dominance without Nafisa Collier. The Wild make a re-signing here before the offseason, the NHL offseason officially has begun. The Frost have lost a couple players. The Timberwolves might be in some hot water with Anthony Edwards. The Vikings could be going after another quarterback in 2027, and the Twins continue to exist as a franchise. All of that and more here on episode 66 of the 301 show.
From the land of 10,000 lakes and just as many heartaches, welcome to the 301 show. We're here to celebrate, commiserate, and maybe, just maybe, see a Minnesota team win it all. Whether you're dreaming of a Vikings Super Bowl, reliving the glory days of the Twins, or still recovering from the Timberwolves roller coaster, we've got you covered. This is the 301 show, where the North remembers and the passion never fades.
If you do end up liking this video, please leave a like down below. You can also comment where you agree or disagree with any of my takes today. You can leave some power rankings, topics, ideas down in the comments down below too. Subscribe to the channel for more, as it really helps me out and lets me know that you guys are liking these videos, as well as the interviews that we do on this channel. But let's get into episode 66 here. Welcome now into Target Field Talkers, where we've got some things to go over here. The Twins have fallen to 30-37 on the season. They are 7 games below 500. They are third still in the AL Central. There is a decent sized gap in between second and third, and then a decent sized gap in between third and fourth. So they are decently in the second place bin, third place bin right now. They are tied for 7th in the AL wild card, which basically means they need to jump 4 teams to get into that third spot to get a wild card spot, which I don't know if that's going to fully happen for them this year. It might be easier to try to just jump 2 teams for the division at this point. In terms of the offense, their batting average as a team is .236. That's tied for 22nd. On base percentage is .314, tied for 20th. Slugging is .387, tied for 17th. On base plus slugging is .700, which is 19th. They have scored 308 runs this year, which is tied for 10th. So they're scoring runs at a pretty good pace. They've hit 72 home runs, which is tied for 12th. They've walked 223 times, 19th, struck out 577 times, which is 23rd. They've stolen 45 bases, which is tied for 15th. And on the automated ball strike challenge system, they are 14th in the league at 53.4%. The pitching and fielding rankings here, they are 460. They have a 4.60 ERA, which is tied for 24th. They have a 1.38 WHIP, which is 25th. The strikeouts are tied for 18th with 538. They have 246 walks. That's 23rd. On the fielding side, they are have committed 42 errors, which is tied for 24th, and they have a 982 fielding percentage, which is also tied for 24th. If we look back, they on a rainy weekend here in the Twin Cities, just a few days were pretty rainy. They lost 3 out of 4 to the Kansas City Royals. Looking ahead here, they have a 3-game series starting tonight as I'm recording this, and we'll upload it today here on the 9th. That series will start in Detroit. and then have a 3-game series at home against the St. Louis Cardinals. And then that one starts on the 12th, which is Friday. And then we'll go to the 14th. And then they will go to Texas to play the Rangers in a 3-game series on the 15th, 16th, and 18th. So there's a day off because of the World Cup in Dallas on the 17th. So we've got a couple things to go over here. We've got a Buxton thing and then an infield kind of fielding thing too, with a player being brought back up from AAA. But let us go over the couple of Buxton things here first. I'm going to take just a second here. So Buxton this weekend ended up crashing into the outfield wall where he suffered a right shoulder contusion. Aaron Gleeman is reporting that Byron Buxton remains out of the Twins lineup, but Derek Shelton indicated that he is very close to returning. Yesterday, was an off day. There's a decent chance that Buxton is back in the lineup Tuesday. So doesn't sound like he is going to be out for that much longer. Could be in the lineup in Detroit tonight, whether that is as a DH or as the center fielder. But the other thing to bring up with Buxton here is assuming he gets healthy and gets healthy soon here, the Buxton trade just kind of has to happen at this point. I think for the betterment of the team and kind of the betterment of his career up to this point, I think it just kind of needs to happen. Again, I think the Braves make the most amount of sense for him to go to at this point, with him being from Georgia and them being a right-handed hitting outfielder kind of away from being, maybe World Series favorites or closer to being World Series favorites. I think Buxton could get them there. And I think if he wants to compete for a championship, I don't know if that's going to be here in Minnesota. It'd be great if he stuck around and in 5 years he was on this team still. But again, in 5 years, he's going to be, mid to late, I think he's 30, 31, something like that now. But he's going to be, 35, 36 years old. And what would his, at that point, like, guys have started going off the age cliff a lot sooner than that. And I just wonder if he getting closer to that age cliff is even more of a reason to go out and try and trade him to the Braves, where he can actually contend. Well, he has the most amount of good, like each year he's having less and less years left before he gets to that age cliff. So I think if you trade him now, that would just give the Braves more chances to do that, and you would get more of a haul back, and you could get a couple of top 10 organizational prospects from the Braves, and you can get younger and a couple of guys that fit the timeline of guys they have now, which we'll get to some of those guys in just a second here. Yeah, I just think that adding Buxton to Acuna in that Braves outfield would be kind of terrifying. But again, they're in the National League, and the Twins wouldn't need to deal with that until a potential World Series matchup, which again, they're not close to that right now with the bullpen the way it is, and with the pitching staff being just battered with injuries at this point. I just don't think that the Twins are anywhere close. Clearly they're 7 games below 500 right now. And so trading him would actually make some sense. As I pull up the Braves roster here, they got Acuna Acuna actually in right. They've got Michael Harris and Eli White listed as their center fielders, and then Mike Yastrzemski. So he would probably go play left field in Atlanta, because I don't think you'd move Ronald Acuna Jr. out of right field when he's held that position. And I think Michael Harris is a good center fielder too. So I think he would either play center field or left field in Atlanta with the Braves. And honestly, if I'm the Braves, I'm making that decision. That's a good, but to me that's worth making the trade and making that exchange. The other big piece of news is that Royce Lewis was recalled from AAA this weekend. He had a bad strikeout to end the game against one of the games against the Royals. He did get a couple of hits. That did mean that they are designating James Outman for assignment to make space for Royce. And so this brings up a question here of what do you really do for the infield and I guess the outfield too the rest of this season, because I don't think that you are in a position right now to let's keep going with the older guys and competing to try to make the playoffs. Like I said, obviously if Buxton wants to stay, or if you don't think the Braves are going to give you a proper return, just keep Buxton on the roster. Like, you don't have to trade Byron Buxton. So that part of it I'm keeping in mind here. So for me, what I want to see is in terms of where to put these guys in the field. And again, it would change based off of who you're going up against in the or what handedness the pitcher was on the opponent. But just ideal kind of broad statement, regardless of handedness of pitcher, this is kind of what I would want to see. So Royce has been playing first and second base. He's gotten some time at both positions. So Royce and Luke Keeschall at first and second, just taking up that side of the infield. Probably Royce at first, Luke Keeschall at second. And then keep Brooks Lee at third, because I don't want to just keep moving him back and forth from positions on that side of the infield between third base and shortstop. So Brooks Lee at third base, and then you bring up Kaelen Culpepper to play short, because right now it's a mix of guys playing short right now. But I would like to see Kaelen Culpepper at the end of the year here playing shortstop. I'd also love to see, obviously when he's hurt right now, but this is assuming he's healthy, keep Ryan Jeffers behind the plate. And then in the outfield, you go, again, assuming you don't trade Buxton, you go Buxton in center, and then Walker Jenkins and Emmanuel Rodriguez, again, assuming they're both healthy in the outfield as well. And then you keep Cody Clemens. You got to keep his bat in the lineup, because he's been arguably their best hitter in the last month. 3 to 5 weeks for sure. He's been their best hitter, I think. And so I would just keep him as the DH / utility infielder, just filling in for guys on their days off. And yeah, that's what I would like to see, I think, in the field for the Twins. Yeah, so that's kind of what let me know what you would want to see with the Twins do with this lineup. Do you even want them to trade Byron Buxton or not? Obviously, asterisks there being dependent on what the trade package is. If it's a complete waste, then no, you don't. But if it's worth it and it's a win-win for both teams, would you want the Twins to trade Byron Buxton? If we move on to predictions here, I had one come off the board this week. Said that Josh Bell will hit 2+ home runs against the Royals this weekend. He hit 1 home run, so that brings it to 43 out of 140 for 31%. Three coming on the board here. I'm officially predicting that Byron Buxton will be traded to the Braves before the 2026 trade deadline. Again, I think that the writing's kind of on the wall here that he would allow a trade. Again, he has a no-move clause, so he can veto trades, but I think he would go to the Braves if they asked him about it. And then Kaelen Culpepper will make his MLB debut before the MLB All-Star Game. So I think he's going to debut with the Twins before the Midsummer Classic. And then on January 1st, 2027, Royce Lewis will not be on the Twins roster. I think he will be either released or traded somehow, and he will just not be on the Twins roster or in their organization at all. Welcome now into the Wolves' den here, where the Anthony Edwards, had made some comments here where makes it a little bit concerning about the state of the roster. While the Lynx are on a 7-game winning streak and heading into a massive matchup against the Las Vegas Aces for the top team in the WNBA. I'll actually start with that. The Lynx are now 9-2 on the season, which is first in the league. They are 4-2 at home. They're 5-0 on the road. They are averaging 90.3 points per game and a 78.4 points against per game. That both of those numbers are first in the WNBA. So they've got the league's best offense, the league's best defense, and the league's best record. The Golden State Valkyrie came to town, which the Lynx won 87-84, and then the Seattle Storm came to town as well, where the Lynx won 88-68. The Lynx have a couple of games here in the next week. They play tonight, Tuesday, June 9th at 7 p.m. against the Dallas Wings, against Minnesota native Paige Beckers. They then travel to Las Vegas to take on the Aces at 7 p.m. on Saturday, June 13th. And then they play against the Portland Fire at 7 p.m. on 7 p.m. Monday, June 15th. So they play 3 games against the Wings, Aces, and Fire. And the Aces are the second best team. Again, still early in the season, but the second best team in the WNBA up to this point. They are 1 game back of the Lynx, sitting with a record of 8-3 on the year. They are averaging 0.1 points less per game, so 90.2 points per game and the Aces are averaging 85.5 points against per game. In terms of the differential here, the Aces are a plus 4.7 points per game. The Lynx, again, having the best offense and the best defense, they're going to have the widest margin for the difference here. Their margin is plus 11.9 on the season so far. Again, that is number 1. They also do have the longest winning streak in the WNBA right now at 7 games. So just a few things to keep in mind heading into the Wings and then Aces game. Again, the Wings are doing a lot better than they did last year. They've had the number 1 overall pick the last 2 years, taking Paige Beckers and AZ Fudd. Dallas now 7-3 on the year. They are in They are in 4th place in the WNBA, behind obviously the Lynx, the Aces, and then actually tied for 3rd with the Atlanta Dream. Again, the last couple number 1 overall picks, going back to the Indiana Fever, would be in a playoff spot right now. as well, as they are 6-5 on the season. So last couple number one overall picks making some noise here in the WNBA. Moving on to the Timberwolves. So a couple things here. We'll go over a few things that will be pretty quick here, and then we'll get into the Brian Windhorst, Anthony Edwards discussion at the end of this segment. First and foremost, the Timberwolves have new jerseys and new branding here. CEO Matt Caldwell said, "We wanted this new look to reflect the pieces of Timberwolves basketball fans have always connected with, while also feeling true to the team and culture surrounding the franchise today. More than anything, we wanted to create something that reflects where the organization is headed and what the entire state can rally behind." So what they did was they took the current logo, the wolf logo howling with the basketball behind it, and then the Minnesota Timberwolves text around it. They took that and switched it to the 1989-90, the original color palette. And so they brought back that kind of design of jersey that says Wolves across the front, that kind of blue and green color. And they also kept the tree era black jerseys as their alternate jerseys. The KG Wolves black tree jerseys are staying as the third jersey. So I do think that this is the best combination of jerseys that the Wolves have ever had. Again, you might argue that there's an individual jersey that's better, but in terms of the home, away, and alternate all together, I personally think that this is the best combination that they've ever had. Other piece of news here is that the big thing to watch that we will track this offseason is that Jaden McDaniels has a possible extension coming up here. So just keep an eye out for that. And the actually second to last thing here that I'll get into, I forgot to mention at the top of this segment and top of the episode, I forgot to put the links to the Google surveys in the description of the last episode, so I'll do that. I edited it in to the description, but it was not up for a couple of days, so I will put those. We're going to extend that if you want to vote on the Timberwolves awards and the Wild awards for the past season, and you can vote in those in the links in the description down below. And please do vote. It helps me out when you do. I can get more data on who the audience thinks should win these awards for the Timberwolves and for the Wild. So yeah, leave your leave those thoughts down below too. But the big piece of news here is a thing from Brian Windhorst. Windy, when he was on one of the ESPN panels after the finals, his quote was, "Going forward after this series, the Minnesota Timberwolves' future is in question, somewhat because of what Ant feels about the roster, and I wonder if Cat was still there if he did." That was his quote. So basically, if he's saying, obviously the Timberwolves lost to the Spurs in 6 games in the conference semifinals. Fun fact, that was their first conference semifinal loss in franchise history. First time they had ever lost in the second round. But at face value, again, the first sentence of this makes it seem like the Wolves are going to blow up the entire team and everybody is going to be traded. I don't think Anthony Edwards is going to be traded. I think it's unlikely. I think there's still a chance, but I think it's unlikely that Jaden McDaniels gets traded. I think there's a couple of pieces on this team that it's very unlikely or just not at all that are going to be traded this offseason. I think Anthony Edwards is that. I think Jaden McDaniels is a very low percentage chance of this happening. But I think what Wendy is saying here, and I understand, like I would agree with this sentiment if this is what he's saying, is Ant wants to feel like this roster is getting better, and if they roll back the same roster, it feels like they're not actually taking a step forward. I would completely agree with that. I do think that there are changes to this roster, and I do think that it's fair for them to at least consult Anthony Edwards about who he would want and who he thinks would be a good fit for his playing style as well. Obviously, I don't think he is going to get the final say in it. I think that's obviously still Tim Conley. But I think that you want, first of all, just to keep him happy. But second of all, if Anthony Edwards obviously is a good basketball player, I think you just want some extra, you could very well just want some extra input on that. I think that's why they the Vikings a couple years ago kept Justin Jefferson in on the loop on what the quarterback situation was, and like wanted to hear his thoughts, again, partially to keep him happy, but then partially just to get a viewpoint of an actual player or a current player too. But this also seems very much like a drive-by of like you shouldn't have traded Karl Anthony Towns. No, obviously Karl Anthony Towns is doing really, really well. Again, there's an argument to be made that, well, not the best player on the New York Knicks. I think that's still Jalen Brunson. The fact that he has that Cat has changed his role in more of a facilitator, like a facilitator role, that he could be the most, if not the second most important player to the New York Knicks right now. And that's where I think, again, it's kind of like Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert is not the best player on the Timberwolves. But if you take Rudy Gobert out, we saw that this season. Like, Rudy Gobert didn't play in all 82 games. And the Wolves seemed to struggle more when he was out than when Ant was out, because they had secondary scorers and they had guys that could step up in Anthony Edwards' absence. Whereas Cat changed into that, where I don't think Cat was that here in Minnesota, but he is more of a facilitator, at least this year on the Knicks. And again, going back to the Vikings, I don't think Sam Darnold would have had that if Sam Darnold wouldn't have changed. Well, might have been more of the play calling, but Sam Darnold wouldn't have been as successful on the Vikings if he had stayed another year than if he did with obviously Seattle winning a Super Bowl, because they actually ran the ball and they took the ball kind of, quasi out of Sam Darnold's hands. And they said, no, like, you don't need to throw 1 million times per game. And I think that's what they're doing with Cat too, is they're making his like workload and what they're asking him to do a little bit easier here. And I don't think that he would have accepted that here in Minnesota. Like, I think if they had asked him to do that in Minnesota, and I don't know if they would have asked him to do that in Minnesota, but I think that he wouldn't have accepted that as easily as he has in New York. So yeah, that are my thoughts on Wendy's comments here. We'll move on to the predictions. At this point, didn't have anything come off the board, so the Wolves den stays at 55 total correct out of 176 total predicted for 31% correct, tied with Target Field Talkers on the leaderboard here for third place. We've got 3 coming on the board here, and those 3 are the Lynx winning streak will hit double digits here. So basically, they will win the next 3 games. The Lynx will beat the Aces, and the Lynx will beat the Wings. All 3 of those are independent of each other. So even if they lose against the Aces, obviously then the streak would be over. But if they lose to the Aces, but they beat the Wings, like those will be separate predictions down below the first one. So those are the 3 predictions that'll come off before the next episode. Moving on to the Nordic Report here, we have some couple of reports here to go over, as well as a Bleacher Report had their wide receiver room rankings here. So we'll see where the Vikings rank in that list. We'll go over first. Jauan Jennings contract incentives came out. This is via Ben Gessling. And he's got 4 incentives here, and you can earn up to 100, or not 100. We can earn up to $1.25 million per incentive. And if he hits all of these numbers or more, he will get that incentive. He will get the full 1.25, and the way it works is they've got different benchmarks along the way. It'll be like 250,000, 500,000, 500,000 on each next level. So this is the number he has to hit to get the max of these incentives. And so if he doesn't hit it, that doesn't mean he will get $0 for these incentives. So they don't have those exact numbers down, what those benchmarks before this are. They just have the max number here. And it's if he plays 80% of the 80% or more of the offensive snaps, he can get 1.25 million. If he gets 80 or more receptions, he'll get the 1.25 million. If he has 900 plus receiving yards, he'll get the 1.25 million. And if he has 13 plus touchdowns, he'll get $1.25 million. So he could get $5 million if he reaches all of those numbers together. So again, I think the Vikings, I think they view it as very much, if he hits all of those numbers, that is very much worth $5 million. So yeah. The other thing we'll go over here, because I'll leave the bigger discussion for the end. So we'll go over the wide receiver rankings, the Bleacher Report ones. This is Gary Davenport was the one that came up with this list. So we'll give you the top 3 here. So number 3 is, and the way they ranked this, actually, excuse me, I'm going to pause for just a second here. The way they ranked this is they gave the top 3 receivers on the roster right now. Again, obviously the offseason isn't over. You can obviously still make trades. So this list might change if one of these teams goes out and trades for, the next best receiver on the market. If they go out and trade for prime Jerry Rice, that would obviously shoot them up the list some. So number 3 here is the Cincinnati Bengals, with their big 3 being Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Andre Iosivas. I don't know how to pronounce his last name exactly. I probably butchered that brutally there. But those, we'll say Jamar, T, and Andre being the big 3 receivers in Cincinnati. Number 2, he has the Dallas Cowboys with CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, and Ryan Flomoy. Those being the top 3 receivers in Dallas has the Cowboys at number 2, and number 1 is the Minnesota Vikings with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and Jauan Jennings. Again, I do think the biggest, so I do think the number ones being Jefferson, Lamb, and Chase are very much debatable on who is the number one. Again, maybe Vikings bias. I do think it is Justin Jefferson. He did have over 1,000 yards last year with statistically some of the worst quarterback play we have ever seen. And then between T. Higgins, George Pickens, and Jordan Addison, those are considered, I believe, considered to be the top three wide receiver twos. But I do think what sets the Vikings apart is Jauan Jennings is by far and away the best of the wide receiver threes in this. So if you're pretty close on the ones and twos, and then the number three, it sets you so far apart. That should just make you the number one wide receiver room in the league. So the Minnesota Vikings, according to Gary Davenport, have the best wide receiver room in the league. Let's go to the quarterback report here. Again, there's been a lot of talk about the quarterbacks, whether J.J. McCarthy is going to get traded or not, who's going to be the QB2 if he doesn't get traded, who's going to be the QB1 at this point, between him and Kyler Murray. And is it going to be, if Kyler Murray gets the one, who's going to be, because this is where I think if Kyler Murray is not the number one, he is going to be the number two, or he is going to be traded. Like, I don't think he's going to be the quarterback three. But my thought process here is Kyler Murray didn't take another meeting with another team after, before he signed. He had the meeting with the Vikings, and then he signed with them without even taking another meeting with the team. And that there's no negotiating salary at this point because the Cardinals are eating a ton of that. So there's no negotiating salary. And so they, personally, I believe, like, why would he have signed with the Vikings if he wasn't given some sort of, like, maybe not 100% guarantee, but some assurances that he would be QB1. So I think he is primed here, again, barring an injury or him somehow just playing terribly. I think he is primed to be the quarterback one in week one in Green Bay. But the number two, the quarterback two here, is a question too, because at the same time, why would Carson Wentz is good enough to be a QB2? I still believe. I think he is still good enough to be a QB2, and he didn't get paid like that much to be a QB2 here. And so I think part of it is he was given some assurances that he would be the QB2 and not the QB3. So I think J.J. McCarthy is likely going to be the QB3 in this situation. So I would be understanding if, I completely understand if J.J. McCarthy wants out, if that's what that means. So I think he could very well be traded. But so if he gets traded, let's just say he gets traded this offseason, maybe it's in training camp, another team has an injury, and that's where I want to, if I'm going to trade him, I'd want to wait until training camp and closer to the preseason just to try and drive up his value a little bit. But then again, could have a Sam Bradford situation, but the Vikings are on the other side of that, where a team pays a premium because their only quarterback goes down in training camp with a freak injury, or again, knock on wood, you never want a player to get hurt. But if that was the case, then the Vikings could take advantage of that and get the most trade value back for J.J. McCarthy or Kyler Murray if J.J. McCarthy balls out and earns the QB1 spot. But so if they trade him and then Kyler Murray either plays well and asks for too much money, or he doesn't play well enough for the Vikings to want to give him a big second or another contract with the Vikings, there's another possibility here. Rick Stroud, who is an insider for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, reports that the Bucs are apparently nowhere close with Baker on a contract extension in terms of the term and the dollar amount. So the question is, are they going to get closer, or is he going to look to go somewhere else? There's a report here too from Adam Carlson of the Vikings Age, who was quoted as saying, Baker has provided stability at the quarterback position while attempting to fill the shoes of a legend, Tom Brady, in Tampa Bay. In Minnesota, Vikings fans would love to have the stability after what they saw on the field from the offense last season, which again, statistically was some of the worst quarterback play in NFL history. I don't think it was the worst, but it was some of the worst quarterback play. Continuing Adam Carlson's quote here, there is still plenty of time for Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to work things out. However, if they don't, again, it's massive if they don't figure things out, the front office of the Minnesota Vikings would be foolish to not consider bringing him to US Bank Stadium to help the purple and gold be competitive going forward. I would love Baker on this team. I'm being perfectly honest. Again, I was more of a Texas fan growing up too. Did not like Baker at Oklahoma, but I would love Baker Mayfield, this version of Baker Mayfield on the Minnesota Vikings. I would absolutely love him. I think he has turned into a great leader. I think he has turned into a quarterback that, and he might end up wanting $50 million, but I think you could get him for a little bit cheaper than like more of that. Again, prove it like high 30s into the $40 million and save some money on that versus, Dak getting $60 million a year. And I do think Baker is still good enough to where you could, get good production out of him for a contract like that. And so I think that again, the big part of that is if they don't extend him in Tampa Bay. I think that this Baker Mayfield needs to be a name that Nolan Teasley throws out in that front office room again. And I think he, amongst the staff, needs to be talked about. I think he is a fantastic option for this offense. I think he and Jefferson would play very, very well together. I think they would get along great. I think that, even if you go out and trade Jordan Addison and retain Jauan Jennings, I think Baker would still play really well with those two as his top two receivers instead of having again the big three that made the Vikings the number one wide receiver room in the league. So again, just keep an eye on that as well, and we'll keep an eye on that here at the 301 show. So yeah, let's move on to predictions. Had one come off the board here, should have come off in the last episode or whenever it was the schedule came out. I said the Vikings will start the season on the road. They will start at home against the Green Bay Packers. That brings me to 53 out of 152 for 35%. That is second place in terms of percentage correct. I got three coming on the board here. Said Baker Mayfield or Kyler Murray will be the starting quarterback for the Vikings in 2027. Said the Vikings will beat the Packers by 10 plus points in the season opener. I think the Vikings are going to come out hot this season. And then I think the Vikings defense is going to have another good year, and the Vikings will shut out at least one opponent in 2026. So this upcoming season. So technically the playoffs are in 2027, but this upcoming season, the Vikings will shut out at least one opponent in the regular season or the playoffs. Now moving on to the final team segment of today's episode, the Rinkside Rundown. Got some things to go over here. First is that the Minnesota Frost lost a couple players in the expansion. It looks like there will be some more players that they could potentially lose in the expansion, plus free agency too. First one is Britta Curl will sign with the PWHL Detroit. They have not announced the team names yet, so they're still just PWHL and then the city. And so PWHL Detroit will be signing Britta Curl to a 3-year contract as the PWHL Las Vegas also signed a couple of former Frost players in May Batherson and Kendall Cooper. Britta Curl signed with 3 years with Detroit. Batherson and Cooper both signed for 2 years with Las Vegas. In the regular season, if we look here at the entire NHL, the third leading point getter in the entire NHL was Britta Curl, so that's a pretty big loss for them. She was 11 goals, 18 assists for 29 points. Those 11 goals were tied for 9th on in the entire PWHL, and the 18 assists led the entire league. So again, big loss for the Frost here going to Detroit. Again, it was kind of to be expected. They could only protect 3 players, which they protected. I think it was Kelly Panic, Taylor Heisey, and Maddie Rooney. But then Kendall Cooper was 6th on the team in points, and May Batherson was 7th on the team in points. So 3 of their top 10 point getters from the last season are currently not on the roster anymore. On the Wild side of it, 2 big things happened. First was that Dylan Larkin, the Detroit Red Wings center, has requested a trade from the Detroit Red Wings, which, again, I do not blame him for. They've not been to the playoffs in, I think it's 11 years now, 10 or 11 years. And he has been with Detroit for his entire career. I think it's 10 years they haven't been to the playoffs. He's been with them for 11. So he's made the playoffs once in his career. But Dylan Larkin also has a no-move clause, so he can tell the Red Wings where he wants to go, and he has submitted 3 teams that he is willing to be traded to. Those 3 teams are the Vegas Golden Knights, the Florida Panthers, and the Minnesota Wild. Again, I do think this is massive for the Minnesota Wild, obviously, insofar as that Dylan Larkin, obviously Michigan kid through and through. He went to Michigan. He grew up in Michigan. Obviously playing for the Detroit Red Wings. The 2 pro teams he played for were the Detroit Red Wings and the Grand Rapids Griffins, who are the AHL team to the Detroit Red Wings. So he has played most, if not all, of his hockey in the state of Michigan. Trains in Michigan in the offseason, lives in Michigan in the offseason. A couple of other guys that live in Michigan in the offseason are the Hughes brothers. So I think that there is a good chance that he wants to come to Minnesota to play with his buddy Quinn Hughes. And I think that is also massive for 2 reasons. One, I think that's a reason to get Quinn Hughes to sign an extension here and stay with the Wild for a few years. Obviously, Quinn Hughes is under contract for next year, so he will for sure be on the Wild next year. But it's further than that. Any more years is not guaranteed. I think if you trade for Dylan Larkin, who is friends with Quinn Hughes, I think that makes it more likely that he could stay here in Minnesota. I think another reason that this is massive, obviously, well, I'll give you two more reasons. So I'll give you 3 reasons total. One, the second reason, obviously, he's just a center, and he's a pretty good center, and I think he would slot in as the top line center, and he can be playing with Zuccarello if they bring him back, Zuccarello and Kaprizov on that top line, and then you have Eriksson Ek and Boldy anchoring the second line. Or you put, if you need to, you put the big three studs up on that top line playing with Faber and Hughes on the back end, and you have Larkin, Boldy, Kaprizov on the top line. So that's my second thing, is just Dylan Larkin is a center, and the Wild desperately need a center. I think another third reason that this is massive is this could potentially, I think this would end up having to be a free agency move, because I don't think in a couple years, I don't think the Wild have enough assets to trade for him. But this could potentially bring Jack Hughes to Minnesota too. I think you could, Jack Hughes, I think, is a free agent in 3 years. And so you could try to sign Jack Hughes to Minnesota and have the top two centers be Hughes and Larkin. Now, again, what would a trade look like for Dylan Larkin? I think at minimum it would be Charlie Stramel, and the Wild don't have a first-round pick this year. That was given to Vancouver for Quinn Hughes. So it would be at minimum Charlie Stramel and next year's first. I think it would probably also you would have to throw in Danila Yurov too. But if you had the top two centers being Eriksson Ek and Dylan Larkin, the third line center doesn't matter as much. Still matters, obviously, but doesn't matter as much. But this other piece of news helps me get rid of Yurov a little bit, stomach a trade where you trade away Yurov a little bit more, because the Wild announced today that they are re-signing Big Mac. Michael McCarron will re-sign for 6 years, $20 million. He's making $3.3 million AAV. That is less than some of the numbers I saw. In terms of the AAV, I saw that he could have gotten on the open market upwards of $5 million on the open market. The fact that they got him for $3.33 million, I think, is them saying we're trying to make room for a Dylan Larkin and make sure that we have depth centers still. And now at this point, what I would love to see is them bring back Nick Foligno as the fourth line center, and you can have Michael McCarron on that third line with a Trenin and a potential Tarasenko reunion there as the third line, and then you have the grinder line down with the two Folignos on the fourth line. I think that would work spectacularly. I think that would be awesome to have that instead of having Yurov as your second line center, or third line center, excuse me. You have McCarron as your third line center, because he has proven that he can be a third line center. He did pretty well in the playoffs as a third line center after Eriksson Ek went down. So I do think McCarron re-signing with the Wild is absolutely massive for the depth, the center depth of this team. I'm going to move on to predictions here. Didn't have any predictions come off the board for Rinkside Rundown. There's Rinkside Rundown sitting at 68 out of 173 for 39%. That is number one. In case you were wondering, the total predictions, adding all of the segments together up, I've got 219 correct out of 641 total predictions that have come off the board. And that is good for 34%. We've got three predictions coming on the board here. Those three predictions are the Wild trade for Dylan Larkin this offseason. I think losing Britta Curl, May Batherson, and Kendall Cooper are going to be big subtractions from this Frost team. So I think the Frost will miss the playoffs next year. And hopefully, I'm very happy to get this one wrong, meaning they will make the playoffs. But and hopefully I'm wrong, but I have a gut feeling that they're going to miss the playoffs for the first time in team history. And then I noticed the misspelling in this one, but Michael McCarron scores double-digit goals in 2026-27. He had 8 last year, so I think he gets to 10 in this upcoming season with a full season here in Minnesota. Moving on to the power ranking segment, which is the final segment of each and every episode of the 301 show, where we take a topic in Minnesota sports and rank it from 1 to 10. In episodes past, we have done the best celebrity fans, the weirdest weather moments, the best comebacks, and the top 10 glue guys. You can find those, again, at the end of every single episode of the 301 show. If you have an idea for a topic for a power rankings segment, please feel free to leave that in the comments down below. I have a few ideas if I can keep going with those, but if you guys have any ideas, I would love to do them for you too. Some of them we have already done. Some of them maybe we haven't. And for this list, we have the top 10 best rivalries in Minnesota sports. So we will do, just the top 10 best rivalries in Minnesota sports here. And number 10 here is the Twins versus the Tigers. Again, a lot of early, late 2000s, early 2010s moments here with these two teams. And another one, number 9, late 2000s, early 2010s, played a game 163. Both these rivalries played a game 163 against each other, but number 9 is the Twins and the White Sox. Obviously, the Jim Thome factor here too. The getting Jim Thome against his former team, hitting a walk-off home run. AJ Przinsky played for both of these teams. A lot of crossover players on both the White Sox and the Twins and the Tigers. But we move on to the gridiron here for number 8. Number 8 is Eden Prairie versus Minnetonka football. And these two teams seem to be at the top of their class every single year and just do not like each other. And number 7, we've got Minnesota versus Minnesota here. Old Minnesota versus new Minnesota. We've got number 7, the Wild versus the Stars, come in at number 7. Again, just the last few years, these two teams have played each other. Obviously, the Wild just beat the Dallas Stars this year. Minnesota, I feel like we don't like the Stars that much, still because of Norm Green moving the North Stars to Dallas and leaving us without professional hockey for 7 long years. Number 6 is, again, another recent rivalry. They played this year in the playoffs. We have number 6, the Timberwolves versus the Nuggets. And again, I think it's in my opinion, the best recent rivalry in the NBA. These two teams just seem to hate each other when they play, and ends up being a lot of fantastic games as well. Number 5, again, Minnesota versus Denver. Again, we've got the Wild versus the Avs. This one goes back all the way to 2003, where the Wild knocked the Avs out of the playoffs in Patrick Waugh's final game that he was ever in the crease for. So the Wild and Avs are the 5th best rivalry in Minnesota. 4th best rivalry, we're going down again to below the pro level. We'll go to the collegiate level, where we have a NCAA hockey rivalry here. We've got the Gophers versus UND. I think this is another fantastic rivalry. Teams just hate each other, even though they're not in the same conference anymore. They still absolutely hate each other whenever they play against each other. Number 3, again, this one can technically be all sports, but we will stick with just hockey here, as number 3 is Roseau versus Warroad. Again, the Battle of Northern Minnesota, the battle of the middle of nowhere Minnesota, where they are separated by just about 20 minutes, and they pack the barn whenever they are playing each other in hockey, both home and away. And as long as their motto is, as long as we don't need to win every single game, but as long as we just beat the other ones, it's still a successful season. Number 2 here will stay below the pro level. We'll go back to the University of Minnesota. Again, this one's more in football, but we will still qualify it as all sports. But mostly the football rivalry is the Gophers versus the Badgers. Wisconsin versus Minnesota. Wisconsin versus Minnesota in football are the top 2 rivalries here, as at number 1 is very clearly the Vikings versus the Packers as the best rivalry in the state of Minnesota. That'll do it for episode 66 of the 301 show. I do want to thank you for taking the time to watch this episode. Again, leave a comment down below if you have made it this far into the episode. What is your best rivalry in Minnesota sports? How much water have you drank today? Let me know that down in the comments down below so I know that you have made it this far. Like the video if you did like this video. Subscribe to the channel if you want more content like this where we discuss Minnesota sports. Also subscribe if you want interviews with Minnesota athletes, media members, and coaches. We thank you for watching this one, and we will see you next time. Peace.